So in this tutorial we are going to discuss about static. What is static in Java? Static is a keyword in Java to define class level methods and variables. So what do you mean by class level variables and methods? We have two types of memories in Java. One is for static memory and second one is dynamic memory. So dynamic memory is nothing but our object. So we are creating object and runtime and that destroys at runtime. But in the case of static memory, it is a class level memory and it will available till execution completed of that particular class. So it will persist. So here we have two memory. Suppose here static memory we have and second we have dynamic. So by definition of object you can say object is an instance of class. So instance is nothing but a dynamic memory. So if you are creating object then you are creating dynamic memory for that particular class, and if you are defining variable as static then it means that you are allocating static memory to that variables or methods. So let's start with program so that you can understand more. So I will create one package. Here I will create one class A. Class can have multiple types of variables. Suppose I have int I, comma j. These are instance variable or object level variable. But if I declare int a, comma b as static, a and b are the class level variable. So you can access from anywhere. Even you can access from object as well. So the scope of static memory is higher than the scope of dynamic memory. So if you define variables as static, the separate memory will be allocated for those variable, but you are not defining as static, it won't define memory. We need to create dynamic memory for these variables. But in the case of static memory, it automatically allocates memory for the static members. So the memory name called A, or we can say context of A. Here if you see, this is the memory and the location is A. What we can say, it is A, and I also call this context of A. So static memory is nothing but a context of A, or we can say context memory. This A is pointing to this memory location. Here inside this we have members A and its default value is 0, and we have B and default values. So anytime if you want to access this A and B, just you need to call capital A dot small a. So it will print 0. You need not to create object of A and then you need to call. So directly you can call this context of A instead of creating object. So I will create one main method here. Suppose I have initialized some values like 85, 95. So two values I have assigned. For A it is 85 and for B it is 95. Okay. Now I want to print those values. So earlier what happens in this case, suppose I have 2 and J has 3. So if I want to access this I, or I want to print this I, what happened? I will print I. See here, cannot make a static reference to the non-static field. So we can't call this I directly. But in the case of A, we are not getting any error. So in the same class, static members can be called within the static method. So main method is nothing but a static method. So we can directly call this method. Otherwise, outside the class, how you will access a dot a. Outside the class, if this main method available outside this a class, then you need to call using using context name and a. So here is our context a dot a. So what it will print, because we have initialized 85 and 95, so in that case it will print 85 here. And if you also want to print this B, then here is 85 and 95. But in the case of I and j, we cannot call using context. If I want to call using context, so it should be static, then only we can call this. Here it is. Cannot make a static reference to the non-static field. Suppose if I declare as static, then it will work. So it won't give you any error. But let's say it is a non-static field. So if you are giving static modifiers, then it is a static field. If you are not defining it as static, then it is a non-static. So I and j are called as non-static fields or variables or instance variable, whatever it may be. So I will create object of class A. Okay, how to create object of class A using new keyword, new A. I've created. So what happens? An object has been created inside dynamic memory. That is nothing but our heap memory. Inside the heap memory, JVM will create object of class A. What object contains? Object contains only static members. No, object contains only non-static member of that class. So I and j are the non-static members of class A. Because we have already one memory allocation for a static member, so we need not to worry about the static members. So for dynamic variables or non-static variables, we need to create memory, we need to allocate a memory, and here in the memory we have two variables, I is equal to 2 and j is equal to 3. So now I have not given any reference. Now let's have one reference. Okay. So A is the reference variable which is pointing to this object. So I will create A is a pointer who is pointing to this memory location. So object is nothing but a memory location. Context is nothing but a memory location. Okay. And in this memory we have I and j. So any point of time if you want to access I and j, just you need to use this reference variable and call those variables. I will call a dot j, a dot I, small a dot I. So what it will print? It will print 2, and if I call a dot j, it will print, this dot is nothing but a operator. It is called as dot operator. Okay, 3. And here we have context. So context will be created with the name of class. So that's why we are able to call capital A dot A, capital B dot B. Whatever the class name, you can directly use the class name to call the static members. So directly we cannot call, but using reference variable we can call non-static members. See here. And I want to print J as well, so run this. So A, B, I and J. Here A 85, B 95, I 2 and J. But here if you see, here we are using capital A, that is nothing but class name, and here we are using reference variable. So this is static in brief. We will discuss more in next tutorial. Thanks for watching.